You probably think the cruelest moment in a relationship is when someone screams in your face. It is not. Sometimes, it arrives as a laugh. My boyfriend chuckled and told a table of friends he had been rating me a 3 out of 10 in their group chat for months. He thought I was just a punchline. But if he wants to reduce me to a single digit, I am going to make sure the truth becomes something he can never hide. My name is Phoebe Hayes, and until that Tuesday night in Charlotte, North Carolina, I thought I was sitting next to the love of my life. We were at a place called the Obsidian, one of those downtown bars that tries too hard to be exclusive. The lighting was so dim you practically needed a flashlight to read the cocktail menu. And the music was a constant, throbbing bass line that vibrated through the soles of my shoes. It was the kind of place where people laughed too loudly, performing enjoyment rather than actually feeling it. I was there with Jace Holloway, my boyfriend of 2 years, along with his college friends Brady Keene and Cole Starks. Brady had brought his girlfriend, Sienna, a sweet girl who always looked like she was apologizing for taking up space. The evening had started normally enough. We were 3 rounds of drinks in, and the conversation had shifted from Brady's new promotion to the latest viral trends circulating on social media. Jace was in high spirits. He was holding court, leaning back in the leather booth with one arm draped over the backrest, his chest puffed out slightly. This was Jace in his element, surrounded by other men who laughed at his jokes and validated his ego. I sat to his right, sipping a gin and tonic that had cost $18. Feeling a comfortable warmth settling in my chest, I watched him, admiring the sharp line of his jaw and the way his eyes crinkled when he found something funny. I felt lucky. I felt secure. Then the topic turned to that internet trend where people rated their partners based on trivial things. Brady made a joke about Sienna burning toast, giving her a solid 8 out of 10 despite her culinary failures. Sienna giggled, playfully shoving his shoulder. It was light. It was harmless. It was the kind of banter that strengthens a bond because it relies on the underlying assumption that you are both obsessed with each other. Jace took a long sip of his whiskey. He set the glass down with a deliberate clink against the marble coaster. He looked at Brady, then at Cole, his eyes gleaming with a strange, conspiratorial light. He did not look at me. He laughed, a sharp barking sound that cut through the ambient noise of the bar. I have been rating her a 3 out of 10 in our guys' group chat for months. Jace said. The sentence hung in the air like smoke. He said it loudly. He said it clearly. There was no slur in his voice, no hesitation. He threw his head back, expecting the chorus of male laughter that usually followed his punchlines, but nobody laughed. The silence that descended on our table was absolute. It was a physical weight, pressing down on my lungs. The thumping music seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the sudden, roaring rush of blood in my ears. Sienna froze with her glass halfway to her mouth. Her eyes darted to me, wide and horrified, before flicking to Jace as if he had just grown a second head. Cole, who was usually the most eager to please Jace, looked down at his drink as if he wished he could dissolve into the amber liquid. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, pulling his arms in tight to his body. Brady, caught in the middle, let out a rough, awkward cough and looked away. Suddenly finding the exposed brick wall fascinating, I sat there. I did not blink. I did not breathe. My mind tried to process the data. 3 out of 10. 3, not average, not just okay. 3 was a failing grade. 3 was repulsive. 3 was something you tolerated because you had no other options. And then the second part of the sentence hit me with the force of a physical blow. For months, this was not a slip of the tongue. This was not a drunken mistake made in the heat of the moment. This was a sustained, documented campaign. For months, while I was cooking dinner for him, while I was planning our weekend getaways, while I was listening to him complain about his boss, he had been reducing me to a number in a digital locker room I was not allowed to enter. He had been performing the role of a loving boyfriend to my face, while turning me into a punchline for an audience of his peers behind my back. I felt a coldness spread through my limbs, starting at my fingertips and moving inward. It was a clarifying cold. It froze the tears before they could form. It froze the scream that wanted to tear its way out of my throat. Jace looked around the table, his smile faltering. He seemed confused by the lack of applause. He looked at Brady, then at Cole, searching for the camaraderie he felt entitled to. I slowly turned my head to look at him. "Thank you for saying that," I said. My voice was steady. It was low, but it cut through the tension like a razor. Jace blinked. He finally looked at me, and I saw a flicker of panic ignite behind his eyes. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that the room had not sided with him. He realized he had miscalculated the social currency of his cruelty. He let out a nervous chuckle, waving his hand dismissively. "Baby, come on," he said, his voice pitching up. "I am just joking. It is just guy talk. It is not that deep." He reached out to touch my arm. I did not flinch, but I looked at his hand as if it were a foreign object, a spider crawling across the table. He pulled back as if burned. Guy talk, the universal shield for bad behavior. He wanted me to be the cool girl, the girl who could take a joke, the girl who would laugh along while her self-esteem was shredded for sport. If I got upset, I would be the dramatic one. I would be the nag. I would be the crazy girlfriend who could not handle his humor. But I was done being the cool girl. I looked him dead in the eyes. I wanted him to see me. I wanted him to see the 3 out of 10 he had created in his mind, and I wanted him to realize that this 3 was about to dismantle his reality. "So which part was the joke?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "The 3 out of 10 part? Or the months part?" The question landed with precision. Jace opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His smile was dead now, a rictus of discomfort stretching his skin. He looked at his friends again, desperate for a lifeline, but they were all studying the table surface with intense concentration. He stammered. He tried to form a sentence, something about exaggeration, something about context, but the words died in his throat. I did not wait for an answer. The answer did not matter. The truth was already out. Sitting on the table between the empty glasses and the melting ice, I reached into my purse and pulled out my wallet. I took out 3 $20 bills, $60. It was more than enough to cover my gin and tonic, and whatever portion of the appetizers I had touched. I placed the money on the table, smoothing out the bills with deliberate care. I placed them right in front of him. I stood up. My legs felt strong. I smoothed down the front of my dress. I looked at Sienna, whose eyes were shimmering with unshed tears on my behalf. I gave her a small, tight nod. She looked like she wanted to say something, but the shock had stolen her voice. I turned my back on the table. "Phoebe, wait," Jace called out. I did not stop. I did not look back. I walked through the crowded bar, the bass still thumping against my ribs, the laughter of strangers ringing in the air. I walked out into the cool night air of Charlotte, leaving Jace Holloway sitting there with his dying smile and his $60, surrounded by the silence he had built for himself. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and red signals that I barely registered. I did not cry. I did not turn on the radio. I just drove with a mechanical precision, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned the color of old bone. When I finally stepped into my apartment, the silence that greeted me felt heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. It was the same apartment I had left 3 hours ago, but it looked different now. The throw blanket on the couch, the half-read magazine on the coffee table, the 2 mugs drying by the sink, they all looked like artifacts from a life that belonged to someone else, someone who was not rated a 3 out of 10. I tossed my keys into the bowl by the door, and that was when I felt it. The vibration. My phone, which I had shoved deep into my coat pocket, was buzzing. It was not a steady ring, but a frantic, rhythmic pulsing against my hip. It felt like a second heartbeat, one that was erratic and diseased. I pulled the device out and the screen lit up the dark hallway. The notifications were stacked on top of each other. A cascading waterfall of desperate communication. It was as if I had become the trending topic in a room I was not even standing in anymore. Jace, 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 Jace. I walked to the kitchen island and laid the phone down, staring at it as the messages continued to roll in. It was fascinating, in a morbid way, to watch the decomposition of his composure in real time. I did not unlock the screen, just watch the previews pop up, constructing a narrative of panic. 10:32 p.m. Babe, where did you go? Come back. Do not be like this. 10:35 p.m. Pick up the phone, Phoebe. You are making a scene over nothing. 10:40 p.m. Everyone is asking where you went. You are embarrassing me. It was a joke. I said I was sorry. 10:45 p.m. Fine. Ignore me. Act like a child. This is exactly why the guys say you are too sensitive. 10:50 p.m. Just answer me. I love you. Please. I did not mean it like that. And then, the most recent one, arriving just as I poured myself a glass of water with trembling hands. Stop this. If you are planning on posting something, take it down. You are overreacting, and you are going to regret blowing this up. I stared at the words. Take it down. I had not posted anything. I had not told a soul. Yet. His mind immediately went to damage control. He was not worried about my feelings. He was not worried that he had shattered my heart. He was worried about his public relations. He was worried about the narrative. I realized then, standing in the cold glow of my kitchen, that he was speaking to me as if I were a rebellious employee, not a partner. He spoke as if my anger was unauthorized. He spoke as if I needed to submit a request form to be hurt. I took a sip of water. It tasted metallic. Another notification slid into view. But this one was not from Jace. It was a direct message on Instagram from Sienna. Phoebe, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I swear to you, I did not know they had been doing that for so long. Are you okay? For so long. The phrase hooked into my chest. Sienna was confirming what Jace had tried to spin as a momentary lapse in judgment. This was not a bad night. This was an era. I was about to turn the phone off, to throw it into a drawer and bury myself under the covers. But another message appeared. It was a text from a number I did not have saved. But the preview showed the name, Elliot Vance. I paused. Elliot. He was in Jace's group of friends, the quiet one who worked in data analysis. He had not been at the bar tonight. He was the one who usually sat at the edge of the photos, holding a beer and looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. We had spoken maybe 5 times in 2 years. I unlocked the phone. My thumb hovered over the message. Phoebe, this is Elliot. I heard what happened at the bar. Brady told the group chat you walked out. I watched the typing bubble appear, then disappear, then appear again. He was hesitating. It is not just a joke. Phoebe, it is not just tonight. My heart hammered against my ribs. I typed back, my fingers clumsy. What do you mean? The reply came instant. I have proof. I have been in that chat for 2 years. I never said anything because I'm a coward. And I am sorry for that. But after what Jace said tonight, you deserve to know. Then came a warning. If I send this to you, you cannot unsee it. Reading this will make you feel sick. It is going to make you want to vomit, but it will also wake you up. Do you want it? I stood there in the silence of my kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. A car drove past outside, its bass shaking the window pane. I had a choice. I could delete the text. I could block Jace. I could break up with him and walk away with the vague, stinging knowledge that he was a jerk who rated me a 3. I could preserve some illusion of dignity, or I could look. I could peel back the skin of my relationship and see the rot underneath. I hesitated for exactly 5 seconds. Send it. I typed, I need to know what I'm living in. The status changed to sending. I waited. The seconds stretched out, elastic and agonizing. Then, the images started to load. They came in one by one, appearing on my screen like tarot cards dealing out a grim future. The first image was not a text message. It was not a meme. It was a screenshot of a spreadsheet. I brought the phone closer to my face, squinting, trying to make sense of the grid lines and the bold headers. It looked like something from Jace's work, a quarterly financial report or a project projection, but then I read the title at the top of the sheet, written in bold, capital letters. Phoebe Hayes, scorecard/ROI. I felt the blood drain from my face so fast it made me dizzy. ROI, return on investment. He had not just rated me, he had calculated me. I zoomed in. The columns were meticulous. There were dates, there were categories, appearance, income potential, social value, obedience, wife potential. Under appearance, there were notes. Gained 2 pounds this month. Hair looks dry. Needs to dress sharper for my company events. Under social value, it read, good with parents, but boring at parties. Does not help me network. 3 out of 10 is generous. And under ROI, a cold, hard summary. Low yield, high maintenance, keep until something better vests. I clapped a hand over my mouth to stifle the sound that was trying to escape. It was a sob, but it sounded like a laugh, a jagged, broken laugh. He had itemized my existence. He had turned my love, my support, my body, and my soul into a ledger of assets and liabilities. The texts from Jace were still coming in at the top of the screen. Baby, please, stop ignoring me. I looked at his name. Then I looked at the spreadsheet. The man who claimed to love me 5 minutes ago was the same man who had typed obedience, moderate, into a cell on a spreadsheet. Elliot's next message popped up. There is more. Keep reading. I gripped the counter. My knees felt weak, but my mind was sharpening. The fog of shock was lifting, replaced by a clarity so bright it burned. I was not a girlfriend. I was an investment portfolio that was underperforming. I swiped to the next image. I stood in the center of my kitchen, the refrigerator humming its low, electric drone behind me, and I swiped my thumb across the glass screen. The motion felt surgical, with every slide. I was peeling back a layer of skin to see the infection spreading underneath. Elliot was sending the screenshots in a steady rhythm, one after another, like a relentless news ticker of my own humiliation. I had thought the spreadsheet was the worst of it. I was wrong. The spreadsheet was just the cover sheet. The real horror was in the qualitative data. Jace had not just rated me, he had dissected me. He had broken me down into component parts like a mechanic stripping a car for scrap metal. I looked at the categories again, my eyes burning. Appearance, income, social value. And then, 2 columns that made the bile rise in my throat. Obedience and wife potential. Obedience. He was grading me on how well I followed orders. He was grading me on how little I pushed back. I clicked on a screenshot dated from last October. It was a close-up of the social value column. Phoebe is stable, Jace had typed into the chat. Captioning the image, she is reliable. But let us be honest, boys, she is a bit ordinary. She is basic. 3 out of 10 is fair. It keeps the market value accurate. I read the word basic over and over again. It was such a lazy, hollow insult. I thought about the books I read, the complex designs I created for my clients, the way I could debate politics or art history. To him, none of that mattered. To him, I was just background noise that cooked dinner and looked presentable enough not to embarrass him, but not stunning enough to make him jealous. I scrolled down to see the reactions. I wanted to believe that someone, anyone, had told him to stop. Cole had replied, but his text was weak. A flaccid attempt at decency. Man, that is a little harsh. She made those short ribs for the game last week. Those were solid. It was pathetic. He defended my cooking, not my humanity. And Brady? Brady, who I had helped move apartments, who I had listened to when he cried about his dad. Brady had jumped right in. Hey, at least she does not burn the house down like Sienna, Brady wrote. But yeah, 3 is tough love. You are the prize here. Jace, never forget that. You are the prize. The laughter in the chat was silent, represented by skull emojis and crying, laughing faces. But it echoed in my kitchen loud enough to shatter the windows. They were bonding over my devaluation. My worthlessness was the glue holding their friendship together. The next batch of screenshots hit my phone, and these were different. These were not spreadsheets. These were screenshots of my texts. I felt a violation so sharp it was physical, like a needle pricking the back of my neck. Jace had been taking screenshots of our private conversations, our most intimate, vulnerable moments, and feeding them to the wolves. There was a text from me, sent 3 months ago on a Tuesday night. I remembered that night. I had been overwhelmed at work, feeling like I was drowning, and I had reached out to him for comfort. I just feel so small today. My text read in the screenshot, I feel like I am failing at everything. I just need you to hold me when you get home. In the context of our relationship, it was a plea for love. In the context of the group chat, it was a joke. Jace had posted it with the caption, Stage 5 clinger alert. She has been spiraling all day. Neediness is not a good look on the scorecard. He had mined my vulnerability for content. He had taken my moment of weakness and used it to prove to his friends that he was the rational, stoic man dealing with an overly emotional woman. Then I saw the one that stopped my heart. It was from last Christmas. My mother had been going through a severe depressive episode. It was a dark time for my family. I had confided in Jace about how scared I was, how much it hurt to see her like that. I had sent him a long paragraph text explaining the history of her trauma. Trying to help him understand why I was so protective of her, there it was. My pain. My mother's pain. Paste. Copy. Send. Jace's comment underneath it was short. It was 4 words. Attachment issues. Classic. LOL. He had laughed. He had diagnosed my mother's suffering and my grief as attachment issues and used it to score points with Cole and Brady. He was mocking the very thing that made me human. He was stripping the tragedy from my life and turning it into a comedy for his audience. I lowered the phone for a moment, breathing hard through my nose. I was not sad anymore. Sadness is a soft thing. This was not soft. This was rigid and cold. I was looking at a sociopath. This was not a mistake. You do not accidentally screenshot a text about a suicidal parent and mock it. You do not accidentally create a spreadsheet with an obedience column. This was a system. A new message from Elliot popped up at the bottom of the screen. It is not just the chat history. Phoebe, he saves the files. He does not just screenshot them and forget them. He has a folder on his drive. He calls it the portfolio, a folder. He was archiving me. He was keeping a record of my failures to justify... What? To justify leaving me? To justify cheating? Or just to have ammunition for the day he decided he was done with me? My hands were shaking, but not from fear. I was shaking with the adrenaline of a detective who has just found the murder weapon. I kept scrolling. I needed to see the bottom of this pit. I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. And then I found something that shifted the ground beneath my feet. It was a screenshot from about 6 months ago. It seemed out of place among the insults and the ratings. It was more logistical. Jace wrote, Hey, I'm going to be offline for a bit. Need to borrow some of Phoebe's financial info to help process a thing. Brady asked, Is that cool? Does she know? Jace replied, She does not need to know the details. She barely looks at her bank statements anyway. I am handling it. I am upgrading her life. Whatever I do is a net positive for the household. It is basically my right as the CFO of this relationship. I stared at the words CFO of this relationship. I had never given him my passwords. I had never authorized him to use my financial information for anything, to help process a thing. What thing? I thought about my bank accounts. I thought about the mail I sometimes threw on the counter without opening immediately because I trusted him. I thought about the times he had borrowed my laptop because his was updating. He was not just talking about me behind my back. He was doing things in my name. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. This group chat was not just a locker room, it was a crime scene. Jace had become so comfortable with his ownership of me, so convinced that I was a 3 out of 10 who should be grateful for his presence. That he felt entitled to my identity. He felt entitled to my credit score. I looked around my empty apartment. It felt like a trap now. Every object, every piece of furniture, felt tainted by his presence, but I was not trapped. I was awake. I looked at the time on the top of my phone screen. 11:14 p.m. I did not reply to Jace. I did not reply to Sienna. I typed 2 words to Elliot. Keep sending. I needed it all. I needed every pixel of evidence, because Jace Holloway thought he was managing a portfolio. He did not realize he was building the case for his own prosecution, and I was about to become the judge, the jury, and the executioner. I continued to scroll, the blue light of the phone screen illuminating the dark living room like a crime scene flare. The nausea I expected had passed, replaced by a cold, vibrating numbness. I was no longer a girlfriend looking through her partner's phone. I was an auditor reviewing a fraudulent ledger. And just when I thought I had seen the bottom of Jace's cruelty, a new name appeared on the screen, bringing with it a fresh wave of realization. Maren Klein. I knew the name instantly. Maren was Jace's colleague at Northvale Dynamics. I had met her twice at company holiday parties. She was tall, sharp, and possessed the kind of effortless charisma that made everyone else in the room feel slightly underdressed. For 2 years. Whenever I had asked Jace about her, about the late-night texts, the lunch meetings that ran long, he had rolled his eyes. He had called me paranoid. He had told me I was projecting my own insecurities onto a purely professional relationship. He had made me apologize for doubting him. The screenshot in front of me proved that my intuition had been functioning perfectly all along. It was a photo of Maren taken from across an office break room. Clearly without her knowledge, she was laughing, holding a coffee cup. Maren Klein. Jace had captioned the photo, 9 out of 10, my exact type, sharp, ambitious, high value. I stared at the number, 9. He had rated me a 3, a failing grade, barely passable. Maren was a 9. She was the gold standard. Below the photo, Brady had commented, "She is out of your league, bro. Does she even know you exist outside of spreadsheets?" Jace's reply was instantaneous and dripping with arrogance. "We have a vibe. If Maren was single, I would have upgraded a long time ago. But the timing is off. She is focused on her career, and I need someone who keeps the home front quiet while I grind." I felt a phantom click in my brain, like a puzzle piece slamming into place. Upgraded. He spoke of us as if we were software subscriptions. I was the basic, ad-supported version he was tolerating until he could afford the premium package. All those times he told me I was the only one who understood him. He was simply saying I was the only one willing to tolerate his mediocrity while he waited for a better offer. The jealousy I should have felt was absent. Instead, I felt a terrifying clarity. I had been gaslit for 24 months, made to feel crazy for suspecting the very thing he was broadcasting to his friends. But Elliot was not done. The next message was not a screenshot of the chat. It was a file attachment that Jace had shared with the group. It was an image of an internal email from his company, Northvale Dynamics. The subject line read, "Senior Management Fast Track. Candidate Requirements." I zoomed in on the text. The email outlined the criteria for a new, high-paying leadership role Jace had been gunning for. One of the bullet points was highlighted in yellow by Jace himself. Candidates must demonstrate stability, integrity, and strong community roots. Character references and a stable personal life are considered key indicators of long-term reliability. Jace had annotated this image before sending it to the boys. He had drawn a red arrow pointing to stable personal life and typed, "This is why I keep the 3 around. She is the perfect cover, safe, boring, looks good on the arm at dinners. If I dump her now, I look volatile. I need to lock this promotion down first. Then we reassess the portfolio." I lowered the phone, my breath catching in my throat. I was not a partner. I was a prop. I was a piece of stage furniture he was using to build a set called Responsible Adult Male, so he could trick his bosses into giving him a raise. My entire relationship was a strategic maneuver to secure a job title. He did not love me. He was employing me, unpaid, to act as his stability. My hand tightened around the phone. The betrayal was absolute, but the danger was evolving. The next screenshot Elliot sent shifted the genre of my horror story from a domestic drama to a financial thriller. It was a text from Jace sent 3 weeks ago. "Hey boys," Jace wrote, "just opened a new platinum card, $50,000 limit. Going to use it to finance the trip to Vegas next month. Don't tell the three. Cole asked, "Where are you getting the mail sent?" "She will see the statement." Jace replied, "I used her address for the application, but I put a different recipient name. She never checks the junk mail. She sees an envelope that does not have her exact name on it, and she tosses it in the pile. I will fish it out when I come over on Friday. It is the perfect drop box." I froze. The perfect drop box. My eyes darted to the entryway table near my front door. There was a wicker basket there where I tossed takeout menus, flyers, and pre-sorted credit card offers that looked like spam. I was terrible at clearing it out. Jace knew that. He knew my habits better than I did, and he had weaponized my own disorganization against me. I ran to the entry table. I grabbed the basket and dumped the contents onto the floor. Flyers for pizza, a coupon for oil changes, a catalog for furniture. My hands were shaking as I sifted through the paper. I tossed aside a bill for the internet. I tossed aside a postcard from a local dentist, and then I saw it. It was a sleek, thick white envelope from a major bank. It looked important. It looked official. I picked it up. The address was mine. Apartment 4B, 1202 Oak Creek Drive. But the name above the address was not Phoebe Hayes. It read, J. A. Holloway. He had used his initials to make it look nondescript, perhaps hoping I would mistake it for a previous tenant or just general junk mail addressed to resident, but it was him. Jace Anthony Holloway. I tore the envelope open, disregarding federal laws about mail tampering. This was my house. This was my address. Inside was a shiny, silver credit card. Along with it, a welcome letter congratulating J.A. Holloway on his new account with a $50,000 credit line. I looked at the activation date. It was active. He had not just borrowed my financial info as he claimed in the earlier texts. He was using my physical residence as a shield to hide debt. He was running a shadow financial life through my mailbox because he knew I trusted him too much to snoop. If he defaulted on this, if debt collectors came looking, they would come to my door. They would come to my home. I looked back at the phone. The group chat was not just a locker room for misogyny. It was a confession booth for fraud. Jace was not just a bad boyfriend. He was a liability. He was a parasite who had attached himself to my life, draining my self-esteem to feed his ego and using my address to hide his secrets. The 3 out of 10 rating was a distraction. It was the smoke bomb. The real fire was right here in my hand, printed on heavy cardstock with a $50,000 limit. I placed the credit card next to my phone on the kitchen counter. The pieces were all there, the motive, the means, the confession. Jace Holloway thought he was playing a game. He thought he was the player and I was the NPC, the non-playable character who just stood in the background and repeated the same lines. He was wrong. I was not an NPC. I was the glitch that was about to crash his entire system. I did not scream. I did not throw the expensive credit card across the room. And I certainly did not call Jace to scream at him. Rage, I realized in that moment, is a chaotic energy. It is messy. It burns fuel without getting you anywhere. What I needed was not rage. I needed strategy. The woman who had been rated a 3 out of 10 might have cried and begged for an explanation. But the woman holding a fraudulent credit card application in her kitchen was done begging. I was shifting gears into survival mode. And in survival mode, you do not make noise, you make plans. I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. My hands were steady now, moving with the precise, mechanical rhythm of a court stenographer. I began the process of preservation. I took photos of the credit card, front and back, ensuring the name and the address were clearly visible next to today's newspaper date on my phone screen. I went back to the chat with Elliot. I screenshotted every single image he had sent me. The spreadsheet, the mocking comments about my mother, the internal email from his company, and the admission of using my address. I did not trust my phone. Phones break. Phones get lost. Phones can be wiped remotely if someone knows your iCloud password. So I uploaded every single file to a secure, password-protected cloud drive that Jace did not know existed. Then, I copied them onto a physical USB drive I used for work. 2 locations, one physical, one digital. This was the first rule of data management I had learned in my career. Redundancy saves lives. Once the evidence was secured, I picked up my phone and dialed Tanya. It was nearly midnight, but Tanya was the kind of friend who would answer a call at 3 in the morning if she knew I was in trouble. She picked up on the second ring, her voice groggy but alert. "I need you to listen to me," I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat, efficient, almost robotic. "I need the number for that civil litigation lawyer your firm used last year, the one who handles harassment and privacy cases." Tanya did not ask why. She did not ask if I was okay. She heard the tone in my voice, and she simply said, "I will text it to you in 30 seconds. While I waited for her text, I opened a new tab on my browser and navigated to the credit reporting agency website. I needed to verify what I had found in the mail. I typed in my social security number, answered the security questions, and waited for the report to load. There it was, under the section labeled Hard Inquiries. There was a ping from a major credit card issuer dated exactly 18 days ago. I stared at the date. 18 days ago. I had been at work. I had been in a 4-hour strategy meeting. I had not applied for credit, but someone living at my address had. The digital footprint confirmed the physical evidence in the envelope. Jace had not just used my mailbox, he had used my credit profile to trigger the application. Likely using his own income data, but my residential stability to boost the score. It was identity theft wrapped in a boyfriend's smile. Tanya's text came through with a name and a link to a booking portal. I did not wait for business hours. I filled out the intake form right then and there, marking the urgency level as high. I wrote a brief summary. Partner using identity for financial fraud. Systemic online harassment. Potential reputation damage. I secured a consultation slot for 9 o'clock the next morning. The lawyer, a woman named Ms. Cheng, called me promptly at 9. Her voice was sharp, professional, and entirely devoid of pity. I liked her immediately. I walked her through the timeline, the bar, the confession, the group chat, the spreadsheet, and finally, the credit card. "Stop," she said, cutting me off gently when I started to explain how hurt I was. "Emotions are for therapy. Phoebe, we are building a case. Here is what you are going to do." She gave me a list of instructions that felt like a military operation. First, create a timeline. Write down every date, every incident, and correlate it with the screenshots. Second, do not engage. Do not text him back. Do not answer his calls. Any response you give him now can be used to paint you as unstable or vindictive. Let his own messages pile up. Third, do not confront him alone. If he comes to the house, do not open the door. Fourth, write a boundary notice, a formal statement that we will send if necessary. But for now, you need to prepare a public statement in case he tries to spin this. I spent the next hour following her orders. I ignored the 47 unread messages from Jace. I ignored the missed calls that were now coming every 15 minutes. Then, I went back to Elliot. I needed one last thing. The screenshots were good, but they were fragmented. They could be argued as out of context. I needed the raw data. "Elliot," I typed, "if you want to do the right thing, I need you to export the entire chat history, the whole thread. You can redact the personal info of the people who were not involved. But I need the file." The ellipsis bubble appeared and disappeared for a long time. Elliot was struggling. He was a guy who had sat by for 2 years watching his friend degrade women, and now he was terrified of the consequences of breaking the bro code. Finally, a message appeared. "I can do that, but I'm scared. Phoebe, if I send you the full export, they will know it was me. I am afraid of being dragged down with them. I have a career too." I stared at the screen. He was afraid of being dragged down. He was afraid that the mud Jace had been throwing at me for months might splatter onto his clean shirt. He wanted to be the hero who tipped me off, but he did not want to pay the price of admission. I typed back a single sentence. It was something I had read once, or maybe something I just felt in my bones. Silence is also a form of voting. Elliot, the chat went still. I watched the screen, wondering if I had pushed him too far, wondering if he would retreat back into the safety of his neutrality. Then, a notification popped up. File sent. The full chat export. He had done it. I downloaded the file immediately, saving it to my 2 secure locations. I now had thousands of lines of text. I had the search history of their cruelty. I had the dates, the timestamps, the jokes, the slurs, the financial plotting. I had the anatomy of their toxicity in a searchable text format. I took a deep breath. The hard part was done. Now came the strategic part. I opened a blank document on my laptop. I needed to write a statement, not for Jace, not for his friends, but for everyone else. Jace had already started the narrative that I was crazy and overreacting in his texts. If I stayed silent, that narrative would solidify. I did not want to write a sob story. I did not want to write a manifesto of a scorned woman. I wanted to write a coroner's report on a dead relationship. I typed the header, "Why I Left." I wrote 3 short paragraphs. I did not use adjectives like heartbroken or devastated. I used facts. I was rated a 3 out of 10 by my partner of 2 years. My financial privacy was violated to secure credit without my consent. My family's mental health history was used as entertainment. I looked at the words. They were cold. They were undeniable. My goal was not to burn Jace to the ground just to watch him scream. That would be petty. That would be what he expected from a 3. My goal was to close the door. I wanted to make sure that he could never, ever do this to another woman without her knowing exactly who he was. I wanted to make sure that when someone searched his name, they did not see the rising corporate star or the charming boyfriend. I wanted them to see the spreadsheet. I saved the draft. I did not post it yet. I was waiting. I was waiting for the perfect moment when the weight of his own actions would be the only thing that could crush him. And judging by the desperate banging I just heard on my front door, that moment was arriving sooner than I thought. I sat on my couch, the laptop casting a pale glow on my face, and opened Instagram. I did not want to write a manifesto. I did not want to write a long emotional caption explaining how much I had loved him or how betrayed I felt. Explanations leave room for debate. Evidence does not. I selected 4 images from the folder I had compiled. The first was the initial admission. Phoebe is stable, but let us be honest. Boys, she's a bit ordinary. 3 out of 10 is fair. The second was the screenshot about my mother. Attachment issues classic, LOL. The third was the smoking gun regarding the fraud. I used her address for the application. She never checks the junk mail. It is the perfect Dropbox. The fourth was the objectification of Marin. 9 out of 10, if Marin was single. I would have upgraded a long time ago. I used the markup tool to carefully scratch out the names of Brady, Cole, and Elliot. I blacked out the specific phone numbers and the profile pictures of the bystanders. I left Jace's name visible. I left the timestamps. I left the cruelty exposed in its raw, unedited form. I stared at the blinking cursor in the caption box. I typed 5 words. This is why I left. I took a deep breath. My finger hovered over the blue share button. This was the point of no return. Once I pressed this, I was no longer just a private citizen dealing with a breakup. I was blowing the whistle. I was shattering the glass house he had built around himself. I pressed the button. The blue bar loaded across the top of the screen. Posted. I put the phone down on the coffee table face up. I poured myself another glass of water and waited. For the first 10 minutes. There was silence. The internet is a vast ocean, and sometimes a stone dropped in the water takes a moment to create ripples. Then, the vibration started. It began with a single buzz, then another. Then a continuous, angry hum that rattled the phone against the wood of the table. I looked at the screen. It was Jace, calling. I let it ring. He called again immediately, and again, and again. I watched his name flash on the screen. A desperate SOS from a sinking ship. I did not answer. I had nothing to say to him that had not already been said by his own screenshots. After the sixth missed call, the texting started. "What are you doing? Take that down immediately. Are you crazy? My boss follows you. Phoebe, pick up the phone." And then, 20 minutes after the post went live, the tone shifted from panic to accusation. "You ruined my life." I stared at that text. "You ruined my life." It was the anthem of every man who had ever been held accountable for his own actions. He did not see the months of lying as the ruin. He did not see the credit card fraud as the ruin. He saw the consequence as the crime. I did not reply. I refreshed my feed. The views on the story were climbing vertically. My friends were reposting it. People I had not spoken to in high school were replying with shock emojis. But then, something happened that I had not calculated. A notification popped up telling me I had been tagged in a video on TikTok. I did not have a large following on TikTok. I barely used the app. I clicked the notification. It was a video from a user called Drama Detective, a faceless account that aggregated internet mess. They had screen recorded my Instagram story. The video was already at 50,000 views and climbing by the second. The caption on the TikTok read, "Girl exposes boyfriend who rated her a 3 out of 10 and used her address for credit card fraud. The audacity is insane." I watched the numbers tick up. 50,000, 80,000, 100,000. I went to the comments section. It was a war zone, but it was a war zone where I had the heavy artillery. The comments were split into two distinct camps, as they always are on the internet. Camp A was the vast majority. He rated her a 3? While using her house to hide debt? Throw the whole man away. The way he talked about her mom is unforgivable. That is evil. Ladies, check your mailboxes. New fear unlocked. Camp B was the predictable defense squad, mostly men with anime profile pictures or cars as their avatars. This is an invasion of privacy. Those were private texts. She is petty for posting this. Just break up and move on. Guy talk is private. He was just blowing off steam. But then, the internet detectives stepped in. A user named LegalEagle22 replied to the privacy defenders. Privacy goes out the window when you admit to mail fraud and identity theft in the chat. That screenshot about the credit card makes this a crime, not just a breakup. Another user added, "You cannot claim expectation of privacy when you are plotting to use someone else's credit profile." He waived his rights the minute he decided to be a criminal. The tide turned decisively. The fraud element, the perfect Dropbox comment, was the anchor that dragged Jace down. It took the story out of the realm of he said, she said relationship drama and placed it firmly in the category of true crime thriller. Then, the doxing began. I had not posted his last name or his employer, but Jace had been sloppy with his own digital footprint. He had the same profile picture on Instagram as he did on LinkedIn. A user commented, "Found him, Jace Holloway, works at Northvale Dynamics. His LinkedIn headline says, 'Leadership with Integrity. You cannot make this stuff up.'" I opened a new tab and went to LinkedIn. I searched for his profile. There it was. A polished, professional headshot where he looked trustworthy and capable. His About section was a collection of buzzwords about transparency, ethical leadership, and building trust in client relationships. Under his recent activity, people were already starting to leave comments on his professional posts. On a post where he quoted a business mogul about doing the right thing, someone had commented, "Does doing the right thing include rating your girlfriend a 3 out of 10 and opening secret credit cards in her name?" Another person wrote, "Northvale Dynamics might want to check their internal mail policies. Seems like your employee has a habit of using other people's addresses. People in his industry were seeing it." I saw a comment from a woman who had the same open-to-work frame on her photo, but her job title listed her as a recruiter in his field. She simply wrote, "Yikes." It was a single word, but in the corporate world, it was a death sentence. I felt a strange detachment watching it all unravel. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. The structural failure had happened months ago. Gravity was just finally doing its job. Then, A new direct message notification appeared on Instagram. It was not a random user, it was not a friend, it was Marin Klein. My stomach dropped. I had not censored her name in the screenshot because Jace had used it as a metric of comparison. I had exposed her as the 9 out of 10 object of his desire. I braced myself for anger. I expected her to scream at me for dragging her into my messy breakup, for making her a spectacle without her consent. I opened the message, my thumb hovering over the block button just in case. Phoebe. The message read, I just saw the story. A friend sent me the TikTok. I waited for the accusation. We need to talk. She continued, not because I'm jealous, and not because I am mad at you, but because I have a history with him too. I stared at the screen. A history. She typed again. He has been harassing me at work for 6 months. I thought it was just me being sensitive, but seeing how he talks about you, seeing the spreadsheet mentality. It makes everything make sense. I have emails. Phoebe, I have Slack messages. I sat back against the couch cushions, the air leaving my lungs in a rush. I had thought this was a story about a bad boyfriend. I had thought it was a story about one girl being raided and used, but it was not. It was a pattern. It was a web. Jace Holloway was not just a compartmentalized jerk who was mean to his girlfriend and nice to his colleagues. He was a predator who operated the same way in every sphere of his life. He assessed value. He manipulated perception, and he extracted what he wanted. I typed back to Marin, I am listening. The viral spiral continued to spin on my phone screen. Thousands of strangers dissecting the wreckage of Jace's reputation. But I was no longer watching the comments. I was looking at Marin's typing bubble, realizing that the 3 out of 10 and the 9 out of 10 were about to join forces. And if Jace thought dealing with one of us was bad, he had no idea what it would be like to deal with the entire equation. The fallout began less than 24 hours after I pressed the share button. If the internet reaction was a storm, the real-world consequences were the mudslides that followed. Slow-moving, but destructive. It started with a notification from LinkedIn. Of all places, I had not posted anything there, but the algorithm works in terrifying ways. A connection of mine who worked in HR at a different tech firm liked a status update from Northvale Dynamics. I clicked through. Jace's company had issued a statement. It did not name him directly, but it did not have to. Northvale Dynamics takes allegations of data privacy violations and harassment very seriously. We are aware of the recent social media reports involving an employee. We have placed the individual in question on administrative leave pending a thorough internal investigation. We are committed to maintaining a workplace of integrity and respect. Administrative leave. In the corporate world, that was the waiting room for termination. They were not firing him for being a bad boyfriend. They were suspending him because a man who steals his girlfriend's identity to commit credit fraud is a liability to a company that handles sensitive client data. The integrity he had bragged about in his bio was now the very policy sword hanging over his neck, while Jace was losing his professional standing. His social circle was detonating. Sienna called me at 10 in the morning. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. He did it too. She choked out. Brady did it too. I felt a wave of exhaustion. I had suspected it. But hearing it confirmed was different. I went through his phone while he was sleeping. Sienna said, her voice trembling with rage, I found the search history in the chat. He rated me a 7. Phoebe. And he wrote that I was low maintenance but high volume because I talk too much. A 7 is passing. I said, my voice dry. It is not about the number. She screamed. It is that they were all doing it. They were all sitting there, drinking our beer, eating our food, and grading us like cattle. I kicked him out. I told him if he wants a quiet apartment, he can go live in his car. The dominoes were falling. Brady was homeless. Jace was suspended. And Cole? Cole, the one who had looked at his drink and wished to disappear at the bar, tried to save himself. He left the group chat. I knew this because a mutual friend sent me a screenshot of Cole's Facebook status. I am ashamed that I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. Cole had written, behavior that demeans women is never okay. I am taking time to reflect on the company I keep. It was a vague, PR-friendly apology designed to distance himself from the blast zone, but it confirmed everything. By running away, he validated the guilt of the entire group. Then came the second wave of evidence, this time from Marin. She followed up on her DM with an email. The subject line was simply timeline. I opened the attachment. It was a PDF of Slack messages and internal work emails between her and Jace. I read them, and my blood ran cold. Jace had not just been admiring Marin from afar, he had been actively campaigning for her. January 12th. One message read, Jace to Marin, you are the only one here who actually gets the vision. Honestly, I feel like I'm talking to a wall at home. I deserve better intellectual stimulation than what I'm getting. February 4th. Jace to Marin, we should grab a drink after the quarterly review. Just us. I can help you with your pitch deck. My treat. No one needs to know. March 10th. Jace to Marin, you are a 9 in a world of 3s. Marin, don't settle for average. He had used the numbers on her. 2. He was trying to recruit her into his life by devaluing me to her face. He was painting me as the wall, the average, the anchor dragging him down, while simultaneously using my address to open credit cards. To fund the lifestyle he thought would impress her, Marin had added a note at the bottom of the email. I never replied to these in a personal way. She wrote, I kept it professional. But you need to see this. He was not just venting to the boys. He was using his misery with you as a pickup line with me. I forwarded the entire email chain to Ms. Cheng, my lawyer, for the first time since the night at the bar. The crushing weight on my chest lightened. I was not crazy. I was not overreacting. I was the target of a calculated campaign of disrespect. And now, I had an army of evidence and allies. I was not fighting alone anymore, but Jace was not going down quietly. Cornered animals bite. And Jace was cornered. He started posting on his Instagram stories. He did not use my name, but the target was obvious. He posted a black screen with white text. It is scary how far a vindictive person will go when they get dumped. Do not believe everything you read on the internet. There are 2 sides to every story. Then another. Mental health is real. Some people hallucinate persecution to justify their own instability, praying for healing. He was calling me crazy. He was using the crazy ex-girlfriend trope to discredit the forensic evidence of his own fraud. He posted a photo of himself at the gym, looking somber, with the caption, focusing on me. The truth will come out. Integrity always wins. It was gaslighting on a public stage. He was betting on the fact that people would get bored, that the nuance of credit fraud would get lost in the noise of relationship drama. But he forgot about Elliot, the quiet data analyst, the one who had sent me the initial export, made a move that shocked everyone. My phone pinged with a notification from the group chat, or rather, a notification that someone had left the group chat. I was not in the chat, obviously, but Elliot sent me a screen recording of what just happened, in the video. The group chat was in chaos. Jace was ranting about lawyers. Brady was complaining about sleeping on a friend's couch. Then, a message from Elliot appeared at the bottom. Jace, you did not just vent. You committed fraud, and you dragged us all into it. I am not going to let my reputation go down with your ship. Then, Elliot attached a file to the group chat. Export. _history. _full ... txt ... He typed one last message, ... I sent her everything, ... The new stuff too, ... The part where you joked about her bank balance last week, ... It is over. And then, on the video, the notification appeared. Elliot Vance has left the conversation. He had nuked the room from the inside. He had let Jace know that the leak was not a glitch. It was a conscious moral choice by one of his own. The internet picked up on this shift immediately. The conversation moved away from just Jace and started dissecting the 3 out of 10 culture. Articles started popping up on Medium and Twitter threads. The scorecard brotherhood. Why men rate women to bond with each other. Jace was becoming the face of a movement nobody wanted to be part of. I put my phone down. The noise of the internet was deafening, a roar of vindication and outrage. But in the quiet of my apartment, a soft ping from my laptop drew my attention. It was an email, not from a friend, not from a lawyer. It was from the fraud department of the major bank. Dear Ms. Hayes. The email read, regarding your inquiry about the application ending in 4029, we have flagged this account for potential identity theft. Our investigation team requires your signature on the attached affidavit to proceed with law enforcement cooperation. Please confirm if the applicant, J.A. Holloway, had your authorization to use your residential address. I stared at the screen. The social media court was loud, but the banking system was silent and deadly. They did not care about ratings. They did not care about bad breakups. They cared about federal regulations. Jace was busy fighting a war on Instagram, trying to convince his followers he was the victim of a crazy ex. He did not realize that the real war had just landed in my inbox, and it came with a threat of prison time. I clicked reply. The knocking started at exactly 6:45 in the evening. It was not the frantic, desperate pounding of a man in a panic, which is what I had expected after the bank email. It was a rhythmic, steady rap. Knock, knock, knock. It was the sound of a neighbor coming to borrow sugar, or a delivery driver waiting for a signature. It was a performance of normalcy. I was sitting in the living room, the blinds drawn, but I knew exactly who was standing on my welcome mat. I checked the app on my phone connected to the doorbell camera. There he was, Jace Holloway. He was wearing a crisp, button-down shirt. The sleeves rolled up to the elbows in that way he knew made his forearms look good. He had shaved. He looked calm. If you did not know, he was currently trending on TikTok as the face of toxic masculinity. And if you did not know, he was under investigation for federal mail fraud. You might think he was just a boyfriend coming over for dinner. He looked up at the camera lens. He knew it was there. He adjusted his collar, a subconscious preening habit, and smiled a tight, sad little smile. It was the face he used when he wanted to get out of a speeding ticket. I stood up. My heart gave a single, hard thump against my ribs. But it was not fear. It was the adrenaline of a soldier hearing the enemy breach the perimeter. I walked to the door. I did not unlock it. I did not undo the chain. I simply stood on the other side of the wood, knowing the camera was recording every micro-expression, every syllable. Open the door. Phoebe, he said. His voice was muffled, but I could hear the practiced softness in it. Let us talk like adults. You are spiraling. I am here to help you come back down. I stared at the wood grain. The audacity was breathtaking. He was framing this as a mental health intervention for me. Rather than a confrontation about his crimes, he was still trying to be the manager, and I was still the unruly employee. I am not opening the door. Jace, I said, speaking clearly so the microphone would pick it up. If you have something to say it to the camera. There was a pause. I watched on my phone screen as his jaw tightened. The benevolent mask slipped for a fraction of a second before he reassembled it. Phoebe. Come on, he said, leaning closer to the doorframe. I know you are hurt. I get it. I was an idiot. It was the whiskey talking that night. You know how I get when I'm with the boys. It is just locker room talk. It does not mean anything. I love you. I listen to the excuses cycle through the air. The whiskey, the boys, the talk. He was stripping himself of agency, according to him. He was not a man who made choices. He was just a victim of alcohol and peer pressure. The whiskey did not make the spreadsheet. Jace, I said. My voice was steady, colder than I thought I was capable of. The whiskey did not archive my text messages for 2 years, and the whiskey certainly did not call my mother's depression a joke. I heard him sigh, a long, exasperated sound. Okay, look, he said, his tone shifting from apologetic to impatient. I messed up. I am owning that. But you? You have taken this way too far. Do you have any idea what you have done? My boss called me. I am on administrative leave. You are destroying my career over a bad joke. You are being vindictive. There it was, the victim card. He was the martyr, crucified by an over-emotional woman. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. "You are not on leave because of me. Jace," I said, "you are on leave because your company realized that a man who lacks integrity in his private life is a liability in his professional life. You turned your girlfriend into content for your amusement. You made me entertainment. Now you are the entertainment. That is not vindictive. That is gravity." The silence on the other side of the door grew heavy. The polite knocking stopped. I saw him on the camera take a step back, and his body language changed. The shoulders hunched, the hands balled into fists at his sides. The reasonable guy act evaporated, replaced by the ugly, sneering reality I had seen in the screenshots. "Open the damn door!" "Phoebe!" he shouted, abandoning the whisper. I did not move. "You want the truth?" He spat the words out, his voice vibrating with venom. "You want to know why I rated you a 3? Because you are a 3. You are average. You are boring. You are lucky I even looked at you. I was doing you a favor by dating you. Do not think for a second you are important just because you got 5 minutes of fame on TikTok. You are nothing without me." The words were meant to eviscerate me. They were designed to hit the insecurities he had carefully cataloged in his spreadsheet. He wanted me to crumble. He wanted me to weep and believe him. But I did not feel small. I felt giant, because by saying it out loud, by screaming it at my door, he was proving everything I had posted. I waited for him to finish panting. "Is that it?" I asked. He did not answer. He was breathing hard, waiting for my tears. "I have one question." "Jace," I said. "What?" he snapped. "If I am just a 3 out of 10, and if I am so unimportant, then who was the person who used my home address to open a credit card application 18 days ago?" The silence that followed was absolute. I watched the screen. Jace froze. It was a physical glitch. His mouth, which had been open to launch another insult, snapped shut. His eyes widened, not in anger, but in pure, unadulterated terror. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking gray and sickly under the porch light. He had thought this was a fight about feelings. He had thought this was a breakup drama. He had not realized I knew about the felony. He looked at the camera lens, realizing for the first time that he was being recorded. He realized that his silence, his reaction, was an admission. He swallowed hard. I saw his Adam's apple bob. "You are crazy," he stammered. But the confidence was gone. The swagger was dead. "You are imagining things. That is paranoia." "No, Jace," I said, "that is a hard inquiry on my credit report, and that is a fraud investigation that started this morning." He took a step back, stumbling slightly on the welcome mat. He looked like he wanted to run, but he also wanted to fight. He pointed a shaking finger at the door. "My lawyer will contact you," he said. His voice was high and thin. "You are slandering me. I will sue you for everything you have." He was bluffing. We both knew it. "You do not sue the person holding the smoking gun. You run from them." "Good," I said. "I have a lawyer too. And unlike you, I have evidence." I did not say anything else. I did not tell him to leave. I did not tell him to go to hell. I just watched. Jay stood there for one more second, staring at the closed door as if trying to calculate a way to rewind time. He looked at the camera one last time. His eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and fear. Then, he turned around. He walked down the hallway, his shoulders slumped, his confident stride replaced by a hurried, nervous shuffle. He did not look back. I watched him disappear from the frame. I saved the video recording to the cloud. I saved it to my phone. I emailed a copy to Ms. Cheng. I walked away from the door and sat back down on the couch. My hands were trembling slightly now, the adrenaline fading, but I did not feel weak. I felt like a fortress. He had tried to break down the door with words, with manipulation, with anger, but the door had held, and for the first time in 2 years, the house belonged entirely to me. The next morning, the war moved from the doorstep to the document scanner. The emotional phase of the breakup was over. replaced by the billable hour phase. Ms. Cheng, my attorney, did not waste time. By 10 o'clock in the morning, a courier had delivered a formal cease and desist letter to Jace's temporary residence, which, I learned through the grapevine, was a budget motel off the highway because no one else would take him in. The letter was a masterpiece of legal aggression. It demanded an immediate halt to all contact. Direct or indirect, it demanded he stop making defamatory statements about my mental health on social media, and most importantly, it warned him that any further dissemination of my private information, including financial data or personal communications, would be met with maximum statutory damages. It was not a request. It was a boundary line drawn in concrete. While Jace was reading that letter, I was sitting in a cubicle at the bank, staring at a fraud investigator named Mr. Henderson. He was a dry, humorless man who looked like he had not smiled since the mid-90s, and I appreciated him immensely. I handed him the affidavit I had signed, swearing under penalty of perjury that I had not authorized the credit card application. So, to clarify, Mr. Henderson said, adjusting his glasses, you are stating that the applicant, Mr. Holloway, used your address without your consent to secure this line of credit? Yes, I said, and I have evidence that he planned it. I slid a printed copy of the screenshot across the desk. It was the text where Jace referred to my mailbox as the perfect drop box. Mr. Henderson read it. He did not gasp. He did not look shocked. He simply made a small, appreciative noise in his throat, like a librarian finding a book in the correct place. This is very helpful, he said. We will open an internal investigation immediately. If our findings match your evidence, we will be referring this to the federal authorities for mail fraud and identity theft. I walked out of the bank feeling lighter. I had just turned a relationship problem into a federal case number. Meanwhile, the battle was opening on a second front. Maren Klein was true to her word. She did not just complain to HR, she filed a formal grievance regarding a hostile work environment. She forwarded the emails where Jace had solicited her for drinks under the guise of work, and the Slack messages where he had disparaged me to elevate her. It was professional, cold, and devastating. It proved that Jace's misogyny was not a domestic issue. It was a liability to Northvale Dynamics. The company moved quickly. They launched a series of witness interviews, and this was where Elliot Vance finally stepped out of the shadows. Elliot texted me later that afternoon. I did it. He wrote, I sat down with the investigators. I gave them the context for the 310 chat. I told them about the spreadsheet. I told them it was hosted on company servers during work hours. That was the nail in the coffin. Jace had not just been a bad person, he had been a bad employee. He had used Northvale Dynamics time and Northvale Dynamics equipment to build his portfolio of misogyny. I spent the rest of the afternoon doing what I had learned to do best, analyzing the data. I combed through the massive text export Elliot had sent me, looking for one specific thing. I needed to link the credit inquiry date, the 18th of last month, to a specific action from Jace. I searched the logs. I scrolled through hundreds of lines of banter about sports and video games, and then I found it, on the 17th of last month. One day before the credit inquiry appeared on my report, Jace had sent a message to the group, just updated the billing address on the account. He wrote, had to make sure the physical card goes to the Dropbox, but the statements go to my burner email. Cannot have the 3 seeing the paper trail. I highlighted the timestamp. It was a perfect match. He had confessed to the mechanics of the crime in real time. I forwarded the screenshot to Ms. Cheng and Mr. Henderson. The net was tightening, and every knot was tied with his own words. By 5 o'clock in the evening, Jace must have realized that his walls were closing in. The aggression from the previous night had vanished, replaced by a terrifying calm. He sent an email to my personal address. The subject line was, Seeking Closure. I opened it, expecting more threats. Instead, I found 5 paragraphs of what I could only describe as weaponized therapy language. Phoebe. He wrote, I have been doing a lot of reflection. I realize now that my inner child was acting out of a place of scarcity. The rating system was a defense mechanism to protect my own vulnerability. I projected my insecurities onto you because I was afraid of true intimacy. I read it with a detached fascination. He was using words like scarcity and projection to sanitize the fact that he was a fraudster. I think we are both hurting. The email continued. I think we owe it to the love we shared to have one final conversation, not as combatants, but as two humans seeking healing. I just want closure. I want us to part ways with grace. Can we meet? Just 10 minutes. He wanted grace. He wanted me to soften. He wanted to get me in a room, charm me with his sad eyes, and convince me to drop the fraud investigation. He thought he could manipulate the three one last time. I did not reply immediately. I forwarded the email to Ms. Cheng. He wants a meeting. I wrote, let us give him one. Ms. Cheng replied 4 minutes later. We will agree to the meeting, but it will be a deposition, not a coffee date. We will hold it at my office. We will have a stenographer, and we will invite the representative from Northvale Dynamics who is handling his investigation. If he wants closure, let us close the book legally. I typed a short reply to Jace. I agree. We need to settle this. Meet me at this address on Thursday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I gave him the address of Ms. Cheng's law firm. I did not tell him who else would be there. Rumors started to swirl by Wednesday. The industry is small, and people talk. I heard from a friend of a friend that Jace was not just on leave. He was being investigated for misappropriation of company assets. Apparently, the internal investigation had flagged that he printed his scorecard spreadsheet on the office printer, color ink, high-quality paper. He had literally used the company's dime to document his abuse. I was sitting at my desk at Larkhaven Risk Group, my actual employer, trying to focus on a risk assessment for a client. When my boss, a formidable woman named Director Halloway, no relation to Jace, thankfully, asked to see me in her office, I felt a pit form in my stomach. I assumed this was the end. I assumed I was bringing too much drama to the firm. I assumed they had seen the TikToks and the Reddit threads and decided I was a distraction. I walked into her office, clutching my notebook like a shield. Sit down. Phoebe, she said. I sat. I prepared my defense. I prepared to tell her that I was the victim, that I was handling it legally. Phoebe, she started, looking at a file on her desk. I have been following the situation. I saw the press release from Northvale, and I saw the way you documented the evidence. I nodded, waiting for the severance package offer. You secured the digital assets in 2 locations. She said, reading from her notes, you created a timeline. You leveraged the internal whistleblower, this Elliot character, to secure the raw data, and you engaged legal counsel before engaging in a public confrontation. She looked up at me. She was not angry. She was impressed. That is textbook crisis management. Phoebe, she said, most people would have just posted a crying video and deleted the evidence. You built a case file. You treated a personal crisis like a corporate audit. I blinked. I had to protect myself. I stammered, well, you did a hell of a job. She said, we have an opening in the Senior Risk Analysis Division. We need someone who understands how to handle sensitive data breaches and reputation management. I think you are overqualified for your current role. I am recommending you for the promotion. I sat there, stunned. Jace had rated me a 3 because he thought I was ordinary. He thought I was a liability to his career. And yet, the very skills I used to destroy his lie, my meticulousness, my stability, my boring obsession with details, were the exact things that just doubled my salary. I walked out of her office holding a promotion offer letter. I looked at my phone. The meeting with Jace was set for tomorrow. He wanted to talk about healing. I was going to talk about prison time. And for the first time in months, I did not feel like a victim. I felt like the person holding the red pen, ready to give him his final grade. The conference room at Ms. Cheng's law firm was freezing. It was a deliberate choice, I suspected. The air conditioning was humming at a low, aggressive frequency that discouraged small talk and kept everyone awake. I sat on one side of the long mahogany table, flanked by Ms. Cheng and her junior associate. Across from us sat Mr. Sterling, the head of human resources from Northvale Dynamics, looking like he would rather be undergoing a root canal than sitting in this room. And then, there was the empty chair. At exactly 2:00 in the afternoon, the door opened. Jace walked in. He was wearing his best navy suit, the one he called his closer suit. He had combed his hair back and put on a pair of non-prescription glasses that he thought made him look intellectual. He walked with a bounce in his step, a forced casualness that screamed of desperation. He offered a tight smile to Mr. Sterling, who did not smile back. He tried to make eye contact with me, aiming for a look of soulful regret, but I was looking at a spot on the wall just above his left ear. He sat down, placing his hands on the table, palms down. "Thank you all for meeting me," Jace began, his voice smooth and practiced. "I know things have gotten heated. I know emotions are running high. I just want to say, right off the bat, that I take full responsibility for the miscommunication." He paused, waiting for someone to validate him. No one did. "I have been doing a lot of work on myself this week," he continued, shifting slightly in his chair. "I realized that my behavior in the group chat was coming from a place of deep insecurity. I was under so much pressure at the firm to perform. I felt small, so I used humor, dark humor, admittedly, as a shield. I rated Phoebe because I was afraid of how much I needed her. It was classic avoidant attachment style." He looked at me then, his eyes wide and pleading. "Phoebe, I am sorry I made you feel judged. It was never about you. It was about my own fear of intimacy. It was a beautiful performance. If I had not seen the spreadsheet where he calculated my wife potential, based on my income, I might have even believed it, but Ms. Chung was not paid to be moved by performances. She did not say a word. She simply reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick binder. She placed it on the table with a heavy thud that echoed in the silence. "Mr. Holloway," Miss Chung said, her voice dry as dust. "We are not here to discuss your attachment style. We are here to discuss your criminal liability." She opened the binder. "Tab 1, she said, pointing to a document. "This is the export of the chat log where you explicitly state your intention to hide assets from Ms. Hayes. Tab 2, she continued, flipping the page. "This is the screenshot where you refer to her apartment as a Dropbox for your fraudulent credit card applications. Tab 3. This is the timeline of the hard inquiry on Ms. Hayes' credit report, which correlates to the exact minute you posted in the chat that you had submitted the application." Jace's smile faltered. He adjusted his glasses. "Those are just jokes," he stammered. "It is text banter. You cannot prove I actually did it. It is circumstantial." "Ms. Chung smiled. It was a terrifying expression. "Actually," she said, "we can—" She pulled a single sheet of paper from the top of the stack. It was fresh. "Printed only 20 minutes ago. This is a preliminary confirmation from the fraud department at the bank," she said. "They concluded their digital trace this morning. The application for the credit card was indeed submitted using Ms. Hayes' name and social security number. However, the device ID used to submit the application matches an iPhone 14 Pro registered to a Jace A. Holloway. Furthermore, the IP address logged during the transaction traces back to the secured Wi-Fi network of Northvale Dynamics." The room went dead silent. Jace turned a color I had never seen on a human face before. It was a mix of gray and green. He looked at the paper. Then he looked at Mr. Sterling from his company. "Mr. Sterling," he said, his voice cracking. This is a misunderstanding. I was testing the system. Mr. Sterling cut him off. He did not raise his voice. He did not look angry. He looked bored. "Northvale Dynamics has zero tolerance for the use of company property for illegal activities. Mr. Sterling said, "We have already handed over the server logs to the federal investigators. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Mr. Holloway, we will be mailing your personal effects to your address on file." Jace looked like he had been punched in the gut. The closer suit suddenly looked too big for him. He slumped in his chair, the facade of the confident executive dissolving into a puddle of panic. Ms. Chung was not done. "There is one more thing," she said. She pulled out a printed email. It was from Elliot Vance. "Mr. Vance provided a sworn statement regarding your intent," she said. "In this chat log from 6 months ago, you told the group, 'Phoebe is soft. She is easy to manipulate. She will never make a scene because she cares too much about being polite. I can do whatever I want and she will just cry in her pillow.'" Ms. Chung slid the paper toward him. "You banked on her silence, Mr. Holloway. You bet your career and your freedom on the assumption that she was weak. That was a bad bet." Jace stared at the paper. His hands were shaking now. He looked up at me, and for the first time, there was no mask. There was just naked, ugly malice. "You think you won?" he sneered, his voice low and venomous. "You are still just a 3. Phoebe, you are nothing. You are a lonely, bitter woman who ruined a good man's life because you could not take a joke. You destroyed me to make yourself feel better." I looked at him. I looked at the man I had cooked dinner for, the man I had comforted when he didn't get his bonus, the man I had loved, and I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a profound sense of relief that he was no longer my problem. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. "I did not destroy you, Jace," I said, my voice steady and calm. "You destroyed yourself the moment you decided I was a number instead of a person. You rated me a 3 out of 10 because you are a small man who needs to stand on someone else's neck to feel tall. You needed me to be small so you could feel big." I stood up. I picked up my purse. "And by the way," I added, looking down at him, "who is the one leaving this room with a promotion? And who is the one leaving with a criminal record?" Jace opened his mouth to shout something. A final slur, a final insult to claw back some shred of power. But he looked around the room, at the stone-faced lawyer, at the disgusted HR director, and he realized something terrifying. No one was listening. No one cared. He closed his mouth. The silence that followed was heavy, absolute, and final. It was the sound of a gavel coming down. I turned and walked to the door. I did not look back. I walked out of the conference room, down the long hallway, and pushed open the heavy glass doors of the building. The afternoon sun hit my face, warm and bright. The city noise washed over me, cars honking, people talking, life moving forward. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that felt cleaner than it had in 2 years. I pulled out my phone and blocked Jace's number. Then I blocked his email. Then I blocked his social media. I walked toward the subway, my heels clicking a rhythm on the pavement. I was alone. I had no boyfriend. I had no dinner plans. And I had never felt more complete. I smiled to myself. Single is a 10 out of 10. And his 3 out of 10? That was just a broken ruler he used to measure a world he was too small to understand. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and let me know which country or city you are representing today. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, please make sure to subscribe to the channel Morgan Revenge Stories, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story get recommended to more people who need to hear it.